Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2CTV, your global news channel. I'm Maya 2C and this is your latest news update from the United States of America. The rise of Islamic army and jihad in the state of Michigan continues. Public political officers one by one are falling into the hands of Islamic politicians and Islamic centers and of course academies to help with the North African and Middle Eastern men to become more politically active and culturally active, and when it comes to martial law and everything, martial arts continues to go unchallenged. And in this video we're going to give you guys the latest updates. We have some videos to show you guys. We're going to analyze the whole situation. We're going to give you guys some facts rather than just some nonsense that you might get from the mainstream media. We're going to give you guys the actual data that we have and how this is quite a concern. As you can see, I'm not in our usual home studio. Well, some of you already know that a few months ago, Switzerland, the government in Switzerland, decided to ban burqas. And I thought, well, let's have a Christmas holiday in Switzerland. So I fled the United Kingdom to come to Switzerland for the next few days. We're going to be giving you guys the latest updates from here. Let's talk about the situation in Michigan. In case you're not really familiar with what's going on in the US, the whole thing is completely out of control and there's not really getting enough coverage. It's a bit of a concern. Now, before we give you guys the actual data about what's happening, let's give you guys the actual situation. I'm going to show you a video of what's going on now, especially with Shia militants, Shia Muslim militants, and of course even the Sunnis as well. They came out. They have academies to help with the young North African and Middle Eastern Islamic men. They have the Islamic centers. We're going to show you a number of these extremists who are talking about jihad, and specifically one of them, the Imam in Detroit, who is talking about basically jihad and Islam is the last hope for the United States of America. And let's go to the first video. Now, these guys are very organized, and as you guys know, obviously the Shia side have their own weird traditions and very, very structured weird things that they do. As I mean, it's already been exposed a number of times, even by the Sunni side. But talking about the biggest crisis right now, we have to talk about the rise of Islamic centers. So, this is the biggest mosque that they have in Michigan, right? As of 2024, Michigan's Muslim population is estimated at around 241,828, making it one of the states with the highest Islamic population in the United States of America. But that's not all of it. We are going to talk about how public political officers are falling into the hands of Islamic politicians. How? Because they are rigging the elections. And they've done the same thing in the United Kingdom. We've had the situation in Tower Hamlet in East London and a number of other places. Project Veritas actually exposed this, which we're going to show you a quick clip from them as well. But this is where it gets slightly concerning. Recent US Census Bureau data indicates that individuals of a Middle Eastern or North African ancestry now constitute 54.5% of Dearborn's population, making the first time that this group has become the majority in the city. They are now the 54% of the population. So the city is no longer a Christian city as it used to be, and of course a liberal secular city that it used to be. You could be a Jew, you could be a Christian, you could be whatever you want. We have already reached that point where cities and towns are now, the demographic is changing to a point where over 50% are already becoming Islamic. Now, we have to talk about one of these extremist imams who these people are basically having the Islamic centers. They are brainwashing. They are increasing the Islamic army. Obviously, in the music, in the video I showed you guys, obviously the preacher was saying Muslim armies, Muslim armies. This is the phrase they are using. I'm not using it. I'm saying it because they are saying it. And this man is a little bit problematic. Let's go to a couple of things he said. This is the Imam of Detroit.
They will resort to violence. This is not a threat, but a fact of history. End quote. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we will always march. We will always propagate. And part of us engaging in jihad for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Habibi, you are the Khalifa. Inni ja'ilun fil ardi Khalifa. You are the one. You are the representation of Allah's will on the earth. أنت تفرق بين الحق. Allah Azza wa Jal has chosen you to know Him in this land. My real message is that Islam is America's last hope. Okay? Many of the thought leaders like Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali in the civil rights movement, what inspired them to move was Islam.
The last hope for the United States of America, according to this Imam. Is it? Really? Let's go back to some more data. In 2022, Dearborn elected its first Muslim mayor, Abdullah Hamoud, reflecting the growing political influence of the Islamic community. Again, because the city is now the majority Islamic. We know that. But even before it got to this point, how did they manage to win so many political offices? How? By cheating. The Islamic women, wives, mothers, they're not allowed to have a say in how they vote in elections. The men decide in the family. The men, especially when it comes to postal votes or mailing ballots, what are you going to call it, they fill it out themselves on behalf of the whole family. And they have a lot of kids. And the moment they get to the age where they're allowed to vote, the man would vote on their behalf, which is a little bit illegal. There's a lot of influence, and I'm not just spreading some rumors. Project Veritas and many others have already exposed this when it comes to the state in Michigan. Let's go just a few seconds of it.
I hope with all the shit going on with the all Muslim council, whatever here, that there wasn't hanky-panky in that election.
Absolutely was.
The absentee ballots are being filled out in people's dining rooms by the candidates.
These guys go door to door and they take people's ballots. They bully them and they give them their ballots over.
Bangladeshi did it, started doing it. Oh yeah, they started before the Yemeni.
They go around the neighborhood with the AB applications and they have people sign the application. Then they put candidates to drop them all off at City Hall. Then they know when they go out, they go back to the person's house and say, give me the, sign the envelope, give me the ballot. They were harvested. And they did.
Project Veritas.
That's what's happening. Now, there are a lot of good people in Michigan, in the state of Michigan, who are just staying away from the big cities. They're in the small towns and in the villages, and they're living their lives, and they have every right to protect their communities. But as big cities fall, the problem will then spread towards smaller towns, and it's happened so many times. We've already seen it in the United Kingdom. A lot of people who were in smaller towns and villages were saying, well, as long as we stay away from big cities like Birmingham, Manchester and London, everything's fine. But that's not fine, because villages, small towns, they're also changing. Demographic is changing. Legalities are changing. Because in Michigan, those places with the local governments, the local political leaders who are Islamic, they are now also going against, for example, gay rights. And again, the next level will be women's rights. In Germany, things have already changed. Over the last few years, we've seen, actually over the last decade or so, we've seen smaller towns and even tiny, tiny villages. Kassel, for example, that's gone, completely gone, for those who are familiar. A lot of the smaller towns around Cologne, that's also gone. There is a massive division, segregation is happening, but different political cultures are clashing. It's not really just about the Germanic natives who are being affected by this, but different cultures. You've got the Jewish side, you've got obviously the Hindus also being targeted by the extremists from the Islamic communities, and this happens all the time. Now, the fact that we are now seeing this, as they call it themselves, the Muslim armies, in Michigan, there are still, I can assure you, there's still a lot of liberals in Michigan who are still complacent. They're saying, I know, I just left my house, went to work in my small town, everything seems to be fine. I'm just avoiding the big cities. I'm not going to Detroit. We've seen what happens when there's an alliance with the far left, between the far left and the Islamists. We've seen what happens when you give too much control or lose control to the nutters, and what they did in Portland, Seattle, many other places. When will people wake up? Now, I'm still optimistic when it comes to America. I'm still optimistic about the mentality of the American culture, that they will stand up, obviously, against this. But there is a big issue. We have to talk about the fact that the political leaders are not actually doing anything about the bigger, the wider picture. Because if America falls, which again, it's not going to fall like that, everything else will be in big, big trouble. Now, I just realized that Michigan doesn't have an eye in this. There we go. Is that right now? Hang on. There we go. Yeah, fixed it. Fix the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get some more reaction from you guys. Let's also fix this. There we go. What are you guys talking about in the live chat? Stu, thank you for your super chat saying Switzerland hiding all that sub money, eh? I wish we had more, fewer demonetized videos, but yeah, no. We have bigger issues with the new media movement, and we will continue to fight for our revolution. Terry French says, nobody has it as bad as Canada does now. Damn Muslims there have taken over, and the politicians and cops are too intimidated to put them in their place. We are having the same problem in certain parts of Britain. Again, as I said, East London is one of those areas. Tower Hamlets completely has fallen because of this issue. What's this? Skycat says, how can Muslims be so blind about their own religion? Can't they put two and two together to see following a warmongering and ultras wife-beating murderers? Wow. Yeah, but one of the main reasons is, and I've met a lot of people who are culturally Islamic or properly religious, but they're like nice people, whatever they are, it's that you will be surprised to find out that a lot of people who are born into Islamic families haven't actually read the Quran properly. Now, some of them, if they are slightly more religious, they are told when they're kids to just read and memorize the words. And as you guys know, the Quran is, if you just memorize it, it's extremely weirdly vague, and at times it's very direct, but it's also, none of it makes sense because the chapters are all over the place. It's just random words. So if you just memorize it, it gets to your head subconsciously, but you don't actually know what you're saying. That is the biggest problem. I've challenged so many of them. Just have a debate, intellectual debate about verses, about chapters. They don't know. Now, there are obviously a lot who are extremely aware and proud of what the text is in the book. But a huge chunk don't actually know. The way Islam is taught when you're a kid in Islamic communities, different countries, is that you're actually taught by the preachers and the imams. So what you do, you just go and sit there, and they just start ranting, and they give you some nice things about, the Prophet being nice, all that stuff, and then they give you some like, oh yeah, you have to be nice to your family, but the women of the family, you can control them. It makes no sense, by the way, but they don't actually want you to read and understand it unless they know that you can become an extremist. Someone who would want to do jihad. The majority of them, there's a lot of still issues psychologically if you become, if you get into the Islamic ideology, even if you're not really a terrorist, there are still a lot of issues psychologically because you will see the world in a more negative way. And you will see the world in a more, you have to follow what I say. But having said that, the majority still don't actually know. If they read it slowly, instead of just memorizing the words, and challenging it, that would open their eyes. Of course, that's not going to happen because, again, the imams and these guys, they're not going to allow actual scrutiny when it comes to the book, which, by the way, they say this is a fixed text. There were different versions that were burned down, so it's completely removed from history. Now, CCD says, Maya, thank you for covering this. I am fairly close to Deerfield in Michigan, about 2 hours. Well, you need to move. Yeah, I mean, there is also a point to be made that people in good communities do need to actually start defending their communities, because it's about your values as well. There's nothing wrong with people. I don't really care what your ideology is, your religion, or whatever you want to do in your personal life, private life. I don't really care. The problem is, you can't say that about most, Hindus and Sikhs and Christians and everybody else. But there is an issue with a lot of the people who, again, the way they are raised in Islamic communities, that they are told, because you are an outsider, you live in a Christian or the Western liberal society, the only way is for you to change them. You should integrate, you are saving them. So you can't really do the same treatment when it comes to a group of people who don't just want to keep in their private lives. And I'm not talking about every single person who is Islamic. There's a lot of cultural Islamic people who just they drink alcohol, they eat bacon, they just say, oh, yeah, well, I was born in a family. They were like, I'm Islamic. They don't actually follow it. They're not really Muslim, obviously, if they don't practice the proper text. But you have to fight for Christian values. And this is not really anything violent. This is simply about promoting the positive values of the Western civilization. Someone is shouting. Michael Carter says, lots of comments, but talking is dead works when you don't move to stop the rise of Satan's religion. I'm sick and tired of the complaining and moaning. Get off your asses and do something about it. There is an issue. I do understand what Michael says, but there's also then problem where other people would say everybody else should rise up while complaining online about other people complaining online. Everybody's waiting for somebody else, and this is a very normal human thing, by the way. There's nothing wrong with it. It's in a sense that there are a lot of cultures who are not revolutionary. The British culture is not revolutionary. The Persian culture, the Iranian culture are not revolutionary compared to the French or the Arab culture, and they have the same problem in Iran. They do uprising. Obviously there's a massive crackdown on people by the Islamic occupiers in Iran, but a lot of people would say, where are the Iranian people rising? These are Iranian people saying about the other Iranian people, saying, wow, they should rise up while sitting at home. Everybody's waiting for somebody else to do something. But there's also, again, one of the main things people need to start doing in the West in order to protect the Western values is you need to differentiate between the ethnicities and religions. So there are a lot of Arabs. There's a lot of middle-class educated Arabs who are from the Arab world, but for example, they're in Michigan or London. They're not necessarily Islamic. And this is what you're also seeing, the rise of this, the middle-class educated ones in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, in Bahrain, in Jordan. And these are the people, especially women, and the young women who want to be educated. And right now they're being oppressed by their own family and by their own dad or husband. They need to be empowered, because you actually need the Arabs on your side. The Arabs who are also against the Islamic ideology. And if you just go around saying all the Arabs are the same, it will create a big problem, because you also need them and they need you. And again, there's a difference between Islamic and Arab, because we also have Arabs who are Christian, Arabs who are atheists, and the Arab world obviously has massively changed over the last few decades. But we are where we are, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, we will keep you guys posted. It's one of those updates where the mainstream media was not going to talk about this anyway, and I thought it would be important to give you guys the facts, the actual update about the situation in Michigan, and with the actual evidence that we have. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.